in this world today, everybody wants to be somebody, and I think I saw a study a little while ago that over 80% of people have the ambition or dream of somehow becoming famous or wanting to become famous and celebritized, idolized, whatever in their lifetime. And something that I've learned over the course of my years, the last 12 years, the last 29 years, however long, is there is an incredible beauty and peace in just being nobody. You know, I live in my van and I drive around, and people just see me as this person just walking around, just little dude walking around doing nothing. And I used to have my own dreams of being famous and a celebrity, albeit delusional, if you've seen my other videos. And one thing that really helped me kind of develop as an individual was just embracing the fact that I'm nobody. No one is thinking about me on a day-to-day basis. No one's trying to take pictures of me or follow me around to watch for a mistake that I make and then use it to make money in a publication. I feel like a lot of the time, because I've struggled with delusions of grandeur a lot in my life, that a lot of the time I'd never even spent any time thinking about what it's like to be nobody, what it's like just to exist without anyone really taking any consideration into what you're doing. And though that was a reality for myself that I had to build, in fact, it's one way that I dealt with delusions of grandeur is by reminding myself, like, look, I am nobody, and looking for all the proof of that. Life's kind of quiet, right? You don't think much about what a celebrity's life or what a world leader's life would look like, and it must be hell in a way. I wonder if people who are rich, people who are famous, people who are celebritized or, world leaders ever spend days thinking about when they were nobodies, when they were just people with their dreams and nothing else. I think a lot of life is spent that way, where you're kind of always trying to get to the next destination, get to the next place, become somebody, And it led me down this pathway of thinking about what individualism is. And, mathematically speaking, in your brain, you've got as many synaptic connections as there are stars in the universe, and then you've got as many possible combinations between synaptic connections than there are subatomic particles in the universe, which means that, statistically speaking, mathematically, every single person you come across is infinitely different from anyone else and has the potential to be infinitely different from anyone else. So we're kind of just a default individual, right? And then I was thinking about, well, you can speak to someone who's a world leader and not want to speak to them after 5 minutes, but I've met people who are homeless and on the streets that I have not been able to stop talking to. Like, they've been the most interesting people I've ever spoke to. Haven't had the luxury yet of speaking to any rich and famous people, so I don't know, that's just a thought experiment. But I would imagine it's because people who embrace the fact that they are nobody or individuals, so that they're a nobody and they're an individual, are interesting, right? When you don't have any kind of preconceptions about who you are, you're free to just navigate a space of conversation without having to put a front up. Someone who's a lawyer, a well-established lawyer or a celebrity might worry that anybody that they talk to is going in some way to crucify them for their opinions or their speculations on the world, when you're a nobody, no one cares. You could say the most wild nonsense known to man and people might just give you a dirty look and go on with their day. And so there's a beauty in being nobody, just existing, walking along, getting along. And I think that it's a bit of an antidote too to delusions of grandeur, is to just really settle yourself in the fact that we're on a planet floating around a very hot planet, a star, in a universe that's so incredibly vast that we can only observe a tiny fraction of it. Like, we're all nobodies in some way, Doesn't mean that we're not individuals and unique and divine in some way. It just means that, we don't really have to take ourselves that seriously, I don't think. And that in seeing that you can embrace being a nobody, you can embrace the freedom that comes with that, right? I just draw the parallels. Like, it must be an absolute nightmare to be a celebrity. I think I read a story about, oh, this is a horrible story. I don't know why I thought about this story, but Emma Watson, she was like obviously a celebrity when she was a kid, and like people had waited for her to become an adult before they started trying to take inappropriate pictures. It's like, you know, like, that's crazy. You have to worry about that in the celebrity world. It's like when you're a nobody, dude. I live in my van. I Because I've had psychoses, I have done some very embarrassing things. I've thought I was on a TV show once, and so I started dancing in a local supermarket, thinking that I was on a TV show and I had to dance in some way to. Yeah, I have no idea. I forgot about that delusion. But that was embarrassing. But hey, I'm here. You know, I'm just a nobody in a way. And there's like this connotation to nobody. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what when someone says, "Oh, you're a nobody," it's like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Why do you want to be somebody? I wrestled with that for years. I was like, why do I want to become somebody? And like, I had these delusions of wanting to become famous to fight off this evil thing. You can watch my other videos for that. But after a while, I kind of thought about, why would I want fame? Like, if I could flick a switch tomorrow and I could be famous and I could have millions of people following me, I don't think I'd want that unless it was attached to something that was like completely necessary. You know, even being a good singer, even being a good actor. Why do we celebritize those people? Because we like them, we admire them. I don't know. I've met 100 people that I've thought are funnier than Jim Carrey, but for some reason, because they're in a separate world which seems in its own bubble, we treat them differently. But in reality, they're nobodies too. Maybe they can go to a different part of the planet and they'll be nobodies. In space, to aliens, maybe they're nobodies. I don't know, I'm just ranting. I just wanted to talk about this for some reason. I just want to make more videos where I'm ranting. But I think that there is a utility in being famous and there's a utility in being nobody. And if you choose to embrace either or, you can have a great time. And being a nobody has its benefits. You're not watched, you're not surveillanced, you're not scrutinized for every little thing that you do, especially if you're ill. My God, you see some of these celebrities that get ill when they're celebrities, and then the world just absolutely tears them apart. Like, they're in all the papers for making a mistake when they were ill, or that they're suffering from mental health. All the papers pick them apart. It's like a crucifixion culture. It's like after, like, the Bible stuff with Jesus or whatever, it's like humanity was like, do you know what? Let's just crucify everyone for every little mistake they make. I think there's this YouTuber at the moment called Pirate Software, and he's got some issues, everybody does. But for some reason, the internet has just completely torn that guy apart. And I think about, well, that's why it's good to be a nobody sometimes. And I feel like being a nobody gives you a freedom that being a somebody doesn't. I think that's what I'm thinking about it. And also, there's just a peace. And there's such a reassurance in that too, because you're kind of allowed room to breathe. Whereas when you're somebody, it's like your life is attached to an external clock, and you're always reminded by everybody that that clock is ticking. Whereas when you're a nobody, you can just sit and look into the world and just watch it pass, in a beautiful kind of way. I suppose you could do that when you're a celebrity, but it must be so much harder. It must be so much harder for you just to sit and watch the world pass. I think about that a lot. Get ourselves into all these messes where we feel like everything has to be done, everything has to be said, everything has to progress so fast. It's like a train, like a freight train with no driver, It's what I think this world is a lot of the time. I think if we all just slowed down and embraced being a little bit of nobody, it would be a lot better. weird video for today, but I just wanted to make something different. Have a good day.